The twin suns hung low over the dusty market square, throwing long shadows between the stalls. The air smelled of hot metal, alien spices, and the faint tang of fear that always lingered in places where the strong ruled the weak. Lyra, the small, alien girl, walked carefully along the crowded path, her head lowered, a woven basket clutched tightly in her thin hands. She was smaller than most of the other aliens here's light shoulders. Fragile-looking limbs and clothes patched so many times they were more stitches than fabric. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to buy a few vegetables in return. Home before the gangs came out. But fate had other plans. The moment she stopped at a stall selling green, claw-shaped fruits, the merchant's eyes narrowed. He was tall, broad, and his leathery skin shimmered with an oily sheen. Two horns curled, back from his head, polished like he took pride in them. He looked down at her as if she were an insect. Well, the merchant said loudly, so nearby shoppers could hear. If it isn't the little rat from the lower blocks, I didn't think you could afford to shop here. Lyra's cheeks burned. She kept her eyes down. I have credits. She pulled a few small coins from her basket, her hands trembling. The merchant sneered. Credits from you? What did you sell this time? Or did you beg for them? A couple of nearby aliens laughed. One whispered something cruel, and the laughter grew louder. Lyra's fingers tightened around her basket. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the ground, but the merchant wasn't finished. Tell you what, he said, leaning over the counter so his shadow swallowed her. I'll give you these fruits for free, if you get down on your knees and beg like the street. Rat you are. The laughter around them sharpened, turning into a cruel chant. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The world seemed smaller now, the air hotter, space between her and the merchant, an unbreakable wall of shame. She turned to leave, but his thick arm shot out, blocking her path. Not so fast. I think the crowd wants to see a show. The crowd leaned in, faces hungry for humiliation, eyes glinting with the thrill of someone else's misery. But they didn't notice the man standing just outside the circle. Cole had been in the market only to restock supplies, some dried food, few spare tools, nothing special, had been. Standing in the shadow of a cloth stall, when he heard the laughter, at first he ignored it. Markets were cruel places. Strangers weren't welcome in other people's business. But when he saw the merchant block Lyra's way, something in him changed. Cole was human, and humans had a way of stepping into trouble they didn't need to. His eyes narrowed as he studied the scene. The merchant was big easily twice Lyra's size, and strong enough to toss her aside with one hand. The crowd wasn't on her side. They wanted her humiliated. Cole could walk away. He could finish his shopping, keep his head down, and avoid making enemies in a place where humans were. Already rare and not always liked, but his legs were already moving. Lyra didn't see him at first.
Oh.
She was staring at the merchant's boots, refusing to meet his gaze. Her mind raced. If she stayed, she'd be humiliated. She'd lose the food she needed to survive. The merchant was about to speak again when a calm, steady voice cut through the noise. Let her go. The crowd turned. Conversation stopped. The market fell quiet enough to hear the buzzing of a far-off vendor's fan. Cole stood there, his hands at his sides, posture relaxed, but his eyes sharp. His voice hadn't been loud, but it carried weight like someone who didn't ask twice. The merchant blinked, then barked a laugh. What's this? The human thinks he can give orders? No one in the crowd spoke. Some watched with curiosity, others with anticipation. Everyone knew humans could be unpredictable, and that made this interesting. Cole stepped closer, his gaze never leaving the merchant. You heard me? Let her go. The merchant smirked. And if I don't, Cole's eyes flicked to Lyra. Then we have a problem. For a moment, the two stood locked in silence, the big, arrogant alien and the quiet human who had decided to get involved. The crowd leaned in, waiting for the explosion. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know why this human was stepping in. She didn't know if he could win. But for the first time since the mocking began, she felt a tiny spark of hope. The merchant's grin widened, but his eyes had the faintest flicker of doubt. He didn't realize it yet. But this was the moment everything in the market was about to change. The crowd didn't move. No one dared to interrupt. It was as if the heat of the twin suns had frozen in the air, trapping every breath. Cole didn't blink. He let the silence stretch, knowing silence made bullies nervous. The merchant's smirk twitched, almost faltering, but then he puffed out his chest and tried to laugh again. "You think she's worth defending, human?" The merchant mocked, tilting his head toward Lyra. "She's nothing. Weak. Worthless. We should thank her for providing entertainment." Cole's voice was calm, but it cut sharper than a blade. "She's worth more than you'll ever know." Ripple went through the crowd. They weren't used to someone talking to the merchant like that, especially not a human. Lyra swallowed hard. She wanted to tell the human to walk away, to not make himself a target. She'd seen too many good people get crushed by standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. The words caught in her throat. Something in the way he stood told her he didn't need her warning. The merchant took a step closer until he was nearly chest to chest with Cole. His breath smelled like fermented root drink. "Do you know who I am? Human? I run this part of the market. My word is law here." Cole tilted his head slightly. "Then your law needs changing." Gasps broke out. A few of the crowd stepped back, glancing toward the security drones hovering. Lazily at the far edge of the square, drones didn't care about truth, they cared about keeping order. And order usually meant siding with the powerful. The merchant noticed too and grinned, thinking he had the advantage. "If you swing at me, human, those drones will burn you down before you hit the ground." Cole's gaze slid briefly to the drones, then back to the merchant. "I don't need to swing." That confused him. What's that supposed to mean? Cole took a single step forward. Just one. But the effect was immediate. The merchant found himself stepping back without meaning to. The crowd murmured at the subtle shift. It wasn't about size. It wasn't about strength. It was about the way Cole moved, like a man who had faced worse things than this and walked away. Lyra saw it too. His eyes didn't just look at the merchant, they measured him, as if reading a manual on how to break him apart in seconds. The merchant's pride flared. He needed to win this moment in front of his audience. He reached over the counter, grabbed one of the claw-shaped fruits and shoved it toward Cole. "Here, take it. Feed your little pet." The crowd chuckled. Cole didn't take the fruit. He let it drop to the dirt between them. "Apologize to her," he said. Silence again. Even the distant hum of the drones seemed to fade. The merchant's eyes narrowed. "You're dead." Before Cole could answer, the merchant shoved Lyra hard, sending her stumbling backward. She hit the ground with a gasp, her basket spilling again, fruits rolling under feet. Cole's jaw tightened, but he still didn't swing. Instead, he crouched down beside Lyra, helping her gather her food. His voice was low, just for her. "Ready to walk?" When I say her heart pounded. "Can't. I can," he said, meeting her eyes for the first time. "And I will." When he stood, the merchant was still grinning, thinking the human's calm meant surrender. But Cole's next move was the first real step forward, the step that would turn this from a petty market insult into something the entire district would remember. He took another step toward the merchant. And this time, the merchant didn't just flinch. He took a full step back. The crowd noticed. So did Lyra. This wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. The market square felt tighter now, the heat pressing down like a heavy hand. The crowd was no longer just curious. They were invested. Every set of eyes followed the human and the merchant, waiting for the first blow. Cole's boots crunched on the dry dirt as he closed the distance. The merchant tried to keep his smirk, but his nostrils flared, his muscles tensed. He didn't like that a human of all things was making him react. Lyra was still crouched on the ground, clutching the edge of her basket. She wanted to get up, to vanish into the crowd, but her legs wouldn't move. There was something magnetic about this human, something that made her want to stay and see what happened. The merchant broke the silence first. "You've got nerve, human. Maybe you think this is one of your little soldier games?" Cole's eyes didn't waver. "I think you've mistaken cruelty for strength." That hit a nerve. The merchant's grin twisted into something sharper. Strength, he said, is making the weak kneel. Watch closely before Cole could answer. The merchant moved. His thick hand shot out not toward Cole but toward Lyra. He grabbed the front of her patched shirt and yanked her up so quickly the basket spilled again. Scattering fruits across the dirt for the second time, gasps erupted from the crowd. Even the lazy security drones drifted a little closer, sensing a shift in the air. Cole didn't rush. He didn't shout. He simply took one more step forward. Put her down, he said. The merchant laughed in his face and shoved Lyra backward. She stumbled, falling hard to the ground. The dust puffed up around her, clinging to her pale skin. Her lips split against a stone, thin line of blood marking her chin. Something in Cole's expression changed, then not rage exactly, but a tightening of focus. Like a predator deciding the exact moment to strike. The merchant noticed it too, and took a half step back before catching himself. "Oh, did that upset you?" he taunted, trying to reclaim the upper hand. "Maybe I should do it again." Cole's voice stayed low. "Try." The crowd leaned in. This wasn't just about a market squabble anymore. This was about reputation. If the merchant backed down, his grip over this part of the city would crack. If the human lost, he'd probably vanish into one of the dark alleys and never be seen again. Lyra wiped the blood from her lip, her chest tight. She wanted to scream at them both to stop, but the sound wouldn't come. Cole reached down and picked up one of the fruits from the dirt, dusted it off slowly, eyes never leaving the merchant. Then, without warning, he tossed it lightly in. The Aaron caught it again. The merchant's eyes followed the motion for half a second. That was all Cole needed to step closer. "Now just within arm's reach." "Last chance," Cole said quietly. For a heartbeat, the merchant hesitated. Then pride won over reason. He shoved Cole in the chest hard enough to make the crowd roar. It was the push everyone had been waiting for. Cole didn't stumble, didn't even sway. Instead, he let the fruit drop from his hand, hitting the ground between them with a dull thud. The sound seemed louder than it should have been. And in that strange, stretched-out moment, even the merchant's laughter faltered. Because now, there was nothing in Cole's eyes except intent. The fight was coming. This time neither the drones nor the crowd would stop it. The fruit lay in the dust between them. Its green skin split where it had hit the ground. The crowd held its breath. Cole didn't move right away. He just stared at the merchant, as if weighing whether the man in front of him was worth the effort. That stillness was worse than any threat because it told the merchant that Cole wasn't afraid. "You're in my market," the merchant growled, his voice louder now, trying to pull the crowd back on his side. "And you don't tell me what to do?" Cole finally spoke, his tone so calm it almost felt wrong. "I'm not telling you. I'm giving you a choice." The merchant's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, his thick fingers curling into a fist. "You want to act like a hero? Then take the first hit." Cole's reply was simple. "No." The merchant laughed, thinking he'd rattled him. Too scared. Cole shook his head once. "I don't start fights. I end them. That was the last straw." The merchant roared and swung, a heavy looping punch meant to crush the human's jaw. But the hit never landed. Cole stepped sideways so smoothly it was like water slipping past stone. The merchant's fist met empty air. Before the big alien could recover, Cole's hand shot out, catching his wrist. With one sharp twist, he bent the arm in a direction it was never meant to go. The merchant grunted in pain, his knees dipping involuntarily. The crowd murmured. Some gasped, others grinned. They'd never seen someone move like that. Cole didn't let go, stepped in closer, forcing the merchant backward, one slow, humiliating step at a time. "You think strength is about making people kneel?" Cole said, his voice low enough for only those nearest to hear. "It's not strength is knowing when to stop." The merchant tried to break free, but every movement just made the pain worse. His bravado was starting to crack. Then Cole did something unexpected. He released him. The merchant staggered back, surprised. His pride flared. He lunged again, trying to tackle the human. This time, Cole's response was faster. One sharp step. To the side, one open palm to the merchant's chest, and the big alien hit the ground hard enough to rattle the boards of the stall behind him. Dust exploded upward, and the crowd erupted in noise. Lyra's eyes were wide. She had expected to fight something wild and messy, but this wasn't wild. It's controlled. Every move Cole made was precise, as if he already knew how the merchant would react before it happened. The merchant groaned, rolling to his side. His voice was quieter now, stripped of some of its swagger. You don't belong here. Cole stepped closer, casting a shadow over him. Maybe not. But neither does what you just did to her. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. The merchant's chest heaved. Cole's expression didn't change. Finally, the merchant looked away. Cole didn't cheer, didn't raise his voice. He simply turned and walked to where Lyra was standing, still clutching her half-empty basket. He picked up one of the fallen fruits, placed it gently inside, and said, "You're done here. Let's go." And just like that, the human walked. Out of the market, the small alien girl following him through the parted crowd while behind them. The merchant sat in the dust, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Defeat. The market noise slowly returned as Cole and Lyra walked away, but it was different, now lower, uncertain. The crowd parted for them without a word. Some stared in open curiosity. Others looked away quickly, as if afraid to be noticed. Lyra's bare feet patted softly on the cracked stone path. She still clutched her basket with both hands, though half the fruit was bruised from the dirt. She hadn't spoken since Cole had stepped in. They reached the edge of the market where the smell of spice and metal faded into the faint, sharp scent of the desert beyond. Cole stopped beside an old stone wall, setting down the small cloth bag he'd been carrying from his own shopping. "You're bleeding," he said simply. Lyra blinked at him, unsure he was even talking to her. She raised her fingers to her lip and felt the thin cut. "It's nothing," she murmured. Cole reached into his bag and pulled out a small square of clean cloth. Without asking, he crouched in front of her and dabbed the blood away. His hands were steady, his movements gentle, strange. For someone who'd just dropped a man twice his size into the dirt. "You didn't have to," she began. "Yes, I did," he cut in quietly, not looking up from his work. "People like him, they don't stop unless someone makes them." Her eyes darted to the ground. "That's not how things work here. The weak don't get saved. They just endure. Then maybe it's time that changes." She didn't know what to say to that. Idea seemed too big, too impossible. He handed her the cloth. "Keep that." She stared at it for a long moment before tucking it into the folds of her patched shirt. Her voice dropped so low, he almost didn't hear her. "Thank you." Cole glanced up at her. "For the fruit, for noticing." He didn't answer right away. There was a weight in her words that went beyond the market fight. It wasn't just about that day, it was about all the days before. No one had noticed or cared. He picked up his bag and nodded toward the road. "Where's home?" Lyra hesitated. "You don't need to walk me. I'm going that way," he lied, his tone casual. She gave the faintest smile, like she knew he wasn't telling the truth, but didn't mind as they walked. Cole's eyes stayed alert, scanning the streets. Lyra didn't notice the shadow that slipped between the stalls behind them, following at a distance. The merchant's pride had been wounded, and in this city, wounded pride was dangerous. But for now, in the fading light of the twin suns, it was just the two of them walking side by side, one human who refused to look away, and one small alien girl who, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel completely alone. Night in the lower blocks was never truly quiet. The air carried the distant hum of generators, the metallic creak of loose signs swaying in the dry wind, and the muffled shouts of people who thought darkness made them safe. Cole had walked Lyra to the narrow alley where she lived, a cramped row of stacked metal homes with flickering light strips above the doors. She had thanked him again, hesitating as if she wanted to say more, then slipped inside. He'd only made it 3 streets away when his instincts told him to stop. Shadows were moving where they shouldn't be. Cole turned his head slightly and caught the faint reflection of metal in the corner of his Aja curved blade, just barely catching the light. They were following him, not just 1, 3, and one more shadow up ahead. trying to block his path. He didn't need to guess who sent them. The merchant wasn't the kind to lick his wounds in private. Cole kept walking, slow and steady, pretending not to notice. But his eyes tracked every flicker of movement. His shoulders were relaxed, but every step was measured, ready to pivot at the first rush. Then he heard a second set of footsteps, light, quick, and much closer than the others. Lyra. She slipped out from a side alley, her small frame hidden under a ragged cloak. Her voice was a whisper meant only for him. "They're waiting ahead, 4 of them." "I know," Cole murmured. "You should take the east path. Less open ground." He gave the faintest smirk. "And miss the fun." Our eyes widened in disbelief. "Fun? They'll kill you? They'll try?" Before she could argue, one of the shadows lunged from behind. Cole pivoted, catching the attacker's wrist mid-swing and twisting it hard enough to make the blade drop with a sharp clatter. Another came in from the left, but before Cole could turn, Lyra moved. She darted forward, scooping up the fallen blade, and swung the flat of it into the man's knee. The alien grunted in pain, stumbling sideways. For a second, even Cole was surprised. The others hesitated, unsure if this fight was still worth it. In the dim light, the human and the small alien girl stood back to back, one tall and steady, the other small but defiant. "Last warning," Cole called into the shadows. His voice was calm, but the tone carried something dangerous in it, like steel under cloth. "Walk away." 2 of them did. The sound of retreating footsteps echoed into the night, but one, the biggest dash charged Cole, stepped forward, closing the distance in 2 strides. His hand caught the attacker's collar, his other fist driving into the alien's midsection with a force that sent him crashing into the wall. The sound rang through the alley like a warning bell. Silence followed. Cole turned to Lyra. She still held the blade, her chest rising and falling quickly. But her eyes were steady. "You didn't run," he said. "Neither did you," she replied. For the first time that night, he allowed himself a small smile. Somewhere behind them, in the deeper dark, the merchant was surely hearing how his second attempt had failed. And Cole knew men like that didn't stop after just 2 tries, which meant trouble wasn't finished. It was only circling, waiting for the right moment. Morning came with a thin gold light spilling across the lower blocks. The market, still dusty from yesterday's chaos, was quieter than usual. Word had spread overnight about the human who had humiliated the merchant and the small alien girl, who hadn't cowered when trouble returned. Lyra stepped into the square with her basket, shoulders straighter than before. The air still held the sharp sense of spice and heat, but today there was something new space. The crowd didn't press in close. No one jeered. The stall owners kept their eyes down, some pretending not to notice her, others giving the smallest nods of respect. She passed the fruit stall. The merchant wasn't there. In his place was a younger assistant who offered her the freshest fruits without a word. She paid in silence, but inside, her chest felt strangely light as she moved on. She felt a faint prickle on the back of her neck. Not the cold fear of being watched, but something warmer, steadier. She glanced toward the far end of the market. There he was, Cole. He stood leaning against a cracked stone pillar, arms loosely folded, blending with the shadows like he belonged there. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes followed Hercom, steady, always scanning the space around her before returning to her face. Lyra hesitated, her basket resting against her hip. She thought about walking over, about saying something. She didn't. She just gave the smallest nod, almost invisible, and turned back toward her path. And though she didn't look again, she knew if anyone tried to block her way, if any. Shadow moved in the wrong direction. He would be there before they could take a second step. For now, the market belonged to its usual noise and smells, and the danger had retreated, but it wasn't gone. It was just watching from the corners. Waiting for another day? The difference was, she wasn't alone anymore. And somewhere in the shade, the human who had stepped forward when no one else would, was still there watching her back. Just like he had promised without ever saying the words.